Join us today as we're exploring a creature that has haunted the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia since the 1960s. Described as a towering figure with glowing red eyes and massive wings, this cryptoid has been the subject of countless sightings, theories, and even a major motion picture. But is it true, or is it all a hoax? Join us as we fly into the Mothman. What up, and welcome to the Cracking Cans podcast. I'm Mike, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Corey. First time here. Thanks for coming. We're just two guys that are going to enjoy a couple cold beers and a little bit of, I guess, monster tales.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back for our second podcast here. Week one, we talked about the Kraken. This week, we got another one on the table ready to roll. So it's gonna be fun, gonna be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Been kind of keeping with our theme. We try and get a beer that kind of goes with the theme of the cast that we're dealing with every week. So, Corey, what we got this week?
So this week we got the UFO Maine Blueberry. It's a hazy blueberry wheat beer. It's 4.8% alcohol, so it's a lot lower than last week's.
Yeah, it's not at our 12% triple cannon level at all.
Yeah, we're back to a normal type of brew here. So yeah, I'll give a little background here on the brewery. It took me actually a little bit of digging on this one because when I looked it up, I kind of fell down the brewery rabbit hole with this one because I couldn't exactly at first figure out who exactly the owner was of UFO, because I thought UFO was just its own thing.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I picked it up, I just thought it was Harpoon Brewery, because I know Harpoon always had like all their UFO.
Yep.
That was just their thing. They had all the UFOs.
Yeah, so I started doing some digging, and yeah, that was one of the first things I came across was Harpoon. And before they were named Harpoon, they were actually Mass Bay Brewing Company out of Boston. I'm going to go over the little rundown here of them. So Harpoon is out of Boston, Massachusetts. They also have a second location in Windsor, Vermont,
which I've been to. It's lovely.
It was founded in 1986 by three college buddies who loved beer: Dan Canary, Rich Doyle, and George Ligeti.
George!
While traveling in Europe after college, they drank many diverse, fresh local beers and experienced firsthand the wonderful beer culture that existed just across the pond. They wanted to bring that to Boston, so they decided to do just that, and in 1986, the Harpoon Brewery received brewing permit number 1 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So, I thought that was pretty cool. They got the first number 1 brewing permit in the whole state.
And it's cool to think, because last week, the brewery that we had the number 1 out of Maryland. That was the first ever brewery in Maryland. So, it's like a happy accident.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So like I said, Harpoon was originally called Mass Bay Brewing Company, Inc., before changing its name to Harpoon. And UFO was actually one of its labels that they then turned into its own brand. They launched UFO Beer Company to challenge what craft beer could look and taste like. The year was 1998. That's when UFO came about. They were feeling aspirational, fateful voyage to the opposite coast. They discovered that breweries of the Pacific Northwest were serving up delicious pints of cloudy wheat beer, which at the time was a new concept for American craft. They couldn't get enough of that stuff, but the style had yet to make its way to the Northeast. So the first UFO beer that they made was a cloudy... I forgot to say it. How do you say it?
Hefeweizen?
Yeah. Hefeweizen, yeah.
Hefeweizen.
I always... All right, so look. So the first UFO beer that they made was a cloudy...
Hefeweizen.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be in this together.
Hefeweizen.
Hefeweizen.
God, okay.
Or as the French call it, Hefeweizen.
Called UFO. At the time, this company was bringing something that was unique and different to the East Coast, which was the wheat beer. UFO stood for unfiltered offering because it had a unique cloudiness due to not filtering yeast out of the beer. But the name UFO also symbolized the alien experience that this was to craft drinkers of the Northeast. So just like the Northeast was introduced to the wheat beer, today we are introducing you to the Mothman.
Ooh.
And to some, he might be an alien experience, as you might not have heard of him. But the story of Mothman brought with it many UFO sightings from the people of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. For the podcast episode, we chose UFO blueberry beer to pair with the Mothman legend because both share an essence of mystery and intrigue. Just as the Mothman sightings have fascinated and bewildered people for decades, our selected beer offers a unique and unexpected flavor experience that is sure to captivate the audience. Both the beer and the legend are deeply rooted in folklore, with UFO blueberry beer hinting at the unknown and the unexplored, much like the Mothman's eerie presence in Point Pleasant. This pairing enhances our episode's theme, providing listeners with a taste of the extraordinary as we delve into one of America's most enigmatic urban legends.
Enigmatic. That's a $5 word right there.
And that was hard.
That
I
was
wouldn't
hard.
be able to say that after a couple of those 12%ers.
All right, you ready to crack?
Yeah, let's crack it open. Get that out of there. Cracking cans.
Cracking cans.
Ooh, you can smell that like right away.
Yeah. It's a horrible pour. Just totally
A lot of
horrible.
head. It's a lot of head on that pour.
I have like half a beer left in here. At least. Like, that's not even like, feel that. That is like, no.
It's like you didn't even pour it.
Yeah.
Last week you're dumping your beer on the table.
Yeah.
This week you're not even pouring your beer.
I'm too embarrassed to cheer. All right, so you ready? Let's cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
Definitely get some blueberry on that.
Yeah, you do.
It's pretty solid, though.
It's not overpowering.
No.
Like, I feel like you taste that blueberry and then you get hit with that wheat beer.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times you get like the blueberry, you just get that over the top, like fake blueberry taste to it.
Yeah.
But I don't think you get that in this.
No, it's well balanced for sure.
It's pretty solid. And you can pour it with one heck of a head on it, if anybody was curious of that out there.
Yep. If anybody likes a lot of head, come to my man here, Mike.
And with that, we dive into the Mothman. Yeah. So I guess to start, we start in the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is just, even in today's terms, it's just a small town. 4,500 people, located right on the Ohio River. And this is a border town. It's right next to the Ohio River. The other side of the Ohio River is Ohio. Hey, who would have thought? So this town really wasn't known for a whole lot back in the day. We'll get into a little bit of maybe the one thing that it was known for. But really this town was just a boring town. Not much going on in it. Until we get to November of 1966. And this is when the first reported sighting of what we now know today as the Mothman was. So the story goes that there were two couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry. And these couples were with another couple, Steve and Mary Millette. And they were driving around having a fun night. Weren't drinking, just out, I guess, in a leisurely drive. We're at like 11 o'clock, midnight. They said no booze involved. And they were up around an area called the TNT area. So the TNT area in this town basically back in the day was known because it made ammunition for the war. So it made not just ammunition, but really just all kinds of explosives. So you had these almost like big bunker-like things where they would make and store all the ammunition, and then outside those bunkers...
So just throughout the whole town, there was all these bunkers.
Well, it wasn't through the whole town. It was outside of town. It was right next to this like wildlife area, so it was kind of out remote, all by itself in the middle of nowhere. And then outside all these TNT areas was like small little like they call them power plants. I kind of assume they were almost something like a substation to power what, because they needed more power to go in. Yeah, exactly. So, but these then ended up, they were abandoned for years after the World War II ended. We're in the 60s now, so none of these places were being used anymore. They were pretty much just abandoned. So a lot of people would go up to these areas. Young kids would go up there to park. I don't know what you do when you park, but I heard there's stuff. And then other people would go up the party. They throw parties up here in this TNT area and everything. It's kind of just a local hangout in a way. butted right up against wild management area, so you're just out in the middle of nowhere. So this couple is out there. They're driving down the road, and all of a sudden they look to the right of their car, and alongside the road, there's what looks like a dog laying there. Couldn't tell if it was alive or dead. They weren't sure. But they were kind of driving fast down the road, so they passed by it. Then they just sat and thought to ourselves, like, we gotta go check what that was. That was somebody's dog. It'd be weird that it was somebody's dog because you're out in the middle of nowhere, but it could be or whatever. So they spin around and they decide they're gonna go take a look at it. So when they get up there, they slow down. They're all kind of arguing because they can't exactly remember where this dog was located on the road or anything. So they're trying to just scan the wood line to see if this dog just got up and left. But they're not seeing anything. And as their eyes start to go around, they get right near the power plant, and what they see looks like two bicycle reflectors just looking back at them. I don't even say looking back at them. It just looked like a reflection off something up there, which they really didn't think a whole lot of it at first. But all of a sudden, as their eyes just adjusted more and more to the dark, they realized that these were eyes looking back at them. These weren't reflectors at all. They were just these bright red eyes. And these eyes were described as almost being like a red that's just totally out of this world. Not a red that you just see every day. Just something about this was totally different.
Just like pulled you in.
It sucked you in, yeah. So they realize it, and right as soon as they kind of realize what they're looking at, this thing just takes off and runs into this old power plant building or whatever. I guess they call it power plant buildings. So it just runs into this vacant building. But it was funny the way it ran, really goofy and just kind of uncoordinated on its feet for being as big as it was, because it was standing 6 to 7 foot tall. Yeah. So it's not like it was just something small standing out there. So they all kind of just look at each other like, what the hell did we just see? That was crazy. And they're all discussing it, trying to figure out what was going on. None of them are going over to investigate because it's like, I don't know what that thing was, but it was big. Yeah. They said its head almost looked like it wasn't like a head with a neck on it. It almost looked like it was just the body went right into a head, which is kind of weird.
No neck.
Yeah, pretty much. Huh. You've seen guys with no necks.
Have, yeah.
Yeah. So it looked like that.
Yep.
None of they just knew it did. There's something off about it, and none of them were going over it. So they're in the car. It's like, well, let's get out of here. Before they can even get out, this thing circles around and flies out of the power plant building, heading right to them. They just stomp on it. So they're flying down the road as fast as they can go. And as they're going down the road, the girls in the back seat are looking out the window just saying this thing's gaining on us. I mean, they're going like 70 mile an hour, 80 mile an hour. They said they were hitting speeds over 90 mile an hour trying to go through there.
Right,
and this thing is, it's not on their tail, it's gaining on them. Like it is getting to them.
Wow.
And as they see it, they just see this wingspan of like 10 foot. And it's just, and they said it's just so, for as uncoordinated as it was on the ground, this thing is just like in the air, just knows what it's doing. This is not its first rodeo. So with that total panic as they continue down the road, they're screaming at each other. They don't know what to do. They just hope they can just get home, get into town, see a cop, something. So as they're flying down this hill, they get out of this wooded area and they enter the town of Point Pleasant. And as soon as they cross that line into the town of Point Pleasant, this creature just flares off. The only thing they can really gather is maybe it was the lights of the town, because they did notice that when they were trying to look at it over there, it seemed like what startled it was some light went towards it. Like it did not want anything to do with that light. So they get home and they're just like, what did we just see? Lock their doors. And the guys, Roger and Steve, are just like, dude, we have to go down to the sheriff's office to tell them. But nobody's going to believe us, so I don't know about going down to the sheriff's office. Still feel an obligation that we have to go down to the sheriff's office and tell them what's going on. So they go into the sheriff's office, and they're telling them the story about what they saw at the power plant up by the TNT area, 6 foot tall thing, 10 foot wind, blah, 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 blah. And, as you start telling a story like that, I feel like you just kind of realize, I don't know if I believe what I saw. But the sheriffs did believe them, that they saw something up there, because they could tell by how these aren't like kids. These guys are like older 20s, early 30s, like our age guys, so it's not like it's just some punk kids. And these guys were visibly shaken up. And you figure you're in the 60s in West Virginia. Like, these guys have hunted before. They fished before. Like
married their sister before.
Married their sister before. I actually heard that Linda is Roger's first cousin, but Mary is Steve. No, this is all fake. No, this is all made up. All made up. None of this is true. For the record. But it's also not confirmed. So we'll go with that.
Yeah.
So the police could tell that they're visibly shaken up. So they're just like, I don't know what they saw, but I'm not in a hurry to go out there and check and see what it is. I think I'm just going to wait till morning comes. We'll go up here to this power plant. We know which one they're talking about. They get calls for kids partying and stuff up there all the time. So it's like, we know where we're going. Let's just go up there and check it out in the morning. So they do. They go scan a couple of the empty buildings. They don't see anything. But they finally get to the building that Roger and Steve told them about. And all they can see is there's like a pile of dust kicked up right in this one spot. Almost like this is where it took off flying at. And I always think of like a moth. You know how moths have that like little bit of dust to them?
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. But it wasn't what they found in that vacant building is what they didn't find. So when you go into all those vacant buildings, I've been in like vacant buildings like that before. You have birds like flying all through the roofs, you know, pigeons, whatever. In this building, there was not a single bird. There was no noise in this building. Like nothing lived in this building at all, which kind of like put the sheriffs on edge. So they backed out of there, just kind of chalked it up to, we don't know what it is, and we don't really need to know what it is at this time. But after they found all that, the local newspapers kind of got a hold of this the next day, and that's where
got out to the public.
Yes, yeah. This is where it took off.
Because back then you didn't have social media; you just had the newspapers and you had word of mouth.
Right.
And you had the radio.
Yeah.
I don't know when the TV started.
They had TVs back then, which you will find out in a couple stories. But yeah, so they had TVs back then, but it was like satellite. It wasn't super reliable, you know. So the local newspaper was pretty much it. It's like the Facebook of our generation. Yeah. I don't know. Are we old if we refer to Facebook?
MySpace.
MySpace. Who's the guy from MySpace?
Tom.
Yeah. Now we're old. Yeah. So newspaper was like, that was pretty much the only form of getting information back then.
So these couples or the couples reported to the newspaper? The sheriff?
I don't know if they got the reports from the sheriff.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I could kind of think. Or just like, you're in a small town, so I'm sure word of mouth spread.
Yeah. Everybody
knows everybody. It's the 60s, small town, you know. They could have possibly went and interviewed these people, but it seemed like they almost had a copy of the police report with the way the article was written, because they were kind of able to take some quotes from the guys that they gave police.
Yeah.
So that day after the newspaper article was reported, there was a man that called in, and he was from, and I could be totally butchering how to say this, Clendenen. And I am sure I'm butchering that. But all you need to know is it's about 50 miles away from Point Pleasant, because I can say that. His name was Kenneth Duncan, and he was digging a hole for his father-in-law.
He died?
He died.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if you thought. I wanted to see if you thought it was like he was just out like, yeah, my father-in-law needed a hole dug, so I'm out here digging it.
Plant a new tree, plant some flowers.
No, he died.
Okay.
Yeah, the father-in-law died.
R.I.P.
And, you know, it's not modern times, so back then, I don't know if it was normal in the 60s that, like, crap, my father-in-law died, I gotta go dig a hole. I don't know. It seems like there would be somebody that would do that, but for whatever reason, this guy and a couple of his friends and family, I think there's 4 of them all together, they were digging this hole.
Got together, drank a case of beer, dug a hole?
Yeah, pretty much, because they started digging in the evening time. The article didn't say it. I just assume that if you're drinking you're digging a grave hole, that you're drinking.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Why would you not be like?
Anytime you're doing any type of work.
Yeah, but especially if you're digging a hole.
Yeah, if you're digging a hole, it's a beer.
Yeah, for sure. So it's beer 30 there. You start cracking open the beers, and the work starts to go slightly slower. So all of a sudden, the evening's turning into night, and they're all kind of sitting. Kenneth decides he's going to climb out of the hole and just take a quick breather. So as he's taking this quick breather, there's some pines on one side of him and pines on the other, and they're kind of in this opening. All of a sudden, over top these pines just flies this giant gray shadow. I don't know. I don't know how many beers Kenneth had tonight, you know? But it was enough. And again, this is like, he's an older guy. He's been in the woods before. This isn't just like some random Joe Schmo that's never seen a bird before.
Yeah, he's
or
not
an
from
owl.
the city, you know, getting scared from his own shadow.
Yeah, from like a squirrel fart or something.
Yeah.
No, this dude, he saw something, enough that scared him. Now, he tried to yell for the other guys, but they didn't see it. It flew over the next set of pines. And this was 4 days before the couples had their interaction with him. So 50 miles away, 4 days before. You kind of take it if the Mothman can really fly.
I mean,
100 mile an hour is kind of what they're saying. 90, they're going 90 mile an hour, and he's gaining on them. So it's really not out of the realm. And let alone being 4 days away, it's really not that crazy of a thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So he never really reported or anything, because what do you report? Yeah, I saw a big gray thing fly over me. I don't know. Nobody's going to believe it. Nobody's going to believe you. Yeah. So there's no sense in him reporting it all by himself. He had said something to a couple friends to see if they had any idea what it was, but really nobody else was there to see it, so nobody else was going to believe him. So he just kind of kept it to himself until he saw this report in the paper, and all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, that's what I saw. And then we move on to the same night that the couples saw the Mothman. That's what we're calling it. I know I referred to it as the creature earlier, but now it's kind of, as the news reports on it, it's quickly went from being, it's the Mothman now. It was the villain from a Batman comic, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not a dork. I don't read comics. Comics are awesome. So they started referring to him as the Mothman. And at this time, a man named Noel Partridge, he had seen something that he couldn't quite explain. Noel was like a general carpenter, just kind of like your everyday guy, hardworking guy. I don't know. Doesn't really seem like the type of guy that would just be full of crap. And it's interesting because his story kind of goes with the story that the kids had. So see if you pick up on what it is. Mr. Partridge, they got done with work, long day's work. He was a laborer. He got home. He ate dinner. He decided, I'm going to sit down on the couch, watch the news or whatever, and just get ready to go to bed. When he sits down, he starts watching TV, and all of a sudden it's like these crazy lines start coming over his TV. It starts getting all staticky. It's making this like super loud humming noise. It's one of those things where there's conflicting reports about it, but one report actually says his TV just blew up in the living room right then. I don't know.
Just blew up.
Just blew up. Like it has had enough of old Mr. Partridge. Other ones said it just made this like high-pitched noise that would just hurt your ears. You couldn't even take it. Either one, they both sound terrible. So he's kind of getting out of the room. He wants to go out and check the satellite to see what's going on, if there's something on it or what's going on there. And at the same time, his dog's at the front door kind of like growling and just acting funny at the front door. So he opens up his door, and he's standing out on the porch, and the dog's just out there, hair standing up, which he lives out in the country a little bit. I don't think it's that crazy. You know, we're in West Virginia. There's bear. There's stuff like that. I'm sure that this dog's been spooked before, but he just said the way it's acting now was just totally different than any way he'd ever seen it act
Because
before.
I'm sure it didn't act like that, like just every day.
Right,
The only time it would act like that was when, there was something.
Yeah, and this thing was in like
going on.
full defense mode.
Yeah.
And this wasn't like barking at a deer. This was like, it was ready to go.
Ready to pounce,
It was a German Shepherd, so we're talking about a bigger dog, a meaner dog, something that, you don't want to mess with. So as he's standing out there on the porch.
Mr. Partridge was on the porch. All right.
Boy, am I parched. So as he's standing out there on the porch, he's scanning the woods to kind of see like what's going on. Between scanning the woods to see what's going on, he's looking at his satellite. Like it just seems like his whole night's going to hell, and just something is going on with it. At that time, he sees what he described as two bike reflectors in the woods, staring at him. Same description, that it's just crazy red color that he's never quite seen before. And at that same time he sees it, his dog sees it and just takes off after it. And as the dog runs over to it, it's barking, snarling. When it gets over to it, bang, you don't hear anything. It's just like total silence. That was the last time he ever saw his dog.
Jesus.
Ever. Now, you got to understand, Mr. Partridge, he lives like 100 miles away from where this couple saw this thing that same night. We're talking
Yeah.
a couple hours before. 100 miles. Again, if this thing can fly as fast as what they said it was, 90 to 100 mile an hour, it could cover that in an hour.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of interesting that he said about this dog disappearing, and that's what the couple saw laying along the road was what looked like a dog.
Oh yeah.
So we don't know if there's a connection there, but it just seemed like, without really trying to make a connection.
How many miles did you say away? 100
This
miles.
was 100 miles away.
So if it was the dog, then it would have flew 100 miles and dropped the dog.
Yeah. Could it be? I don't know.
Yeah.
You would think if maybe this is home base for the Mothman.
Yeah.
You know, it's always, I know for me, it's always nicer. I can go pick up a cheeseburger. I like to go home and eat it. You know,
Yeah.
There's that, you got that comfort of home.
Yeah.
You know, so is it that crazy? I don't know. But after that, Mr. Partridge ran into his house, locked the door, and did not go outside till morning. And this won't be the last time we hear from him, because he also had some other stuff going on later on. So over the next few days, there were multiple sightings coming in. And you can imagine how it is when you have something crazy like this happening in town. It's not like it's just your everyday folks coming out to report what they saw.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of take most of them, I think, with a grain of salt by who saw what. But there were a couple of reports that kind of stood out just because of some things that they threw into them. So the next couple women that we're talking about, they remain unnamed, so we're not sure.
Anonymous.
You know, we're getting these going off old newspapers, so we're really not sure of the sources on these ones, but they're good stories either way. So the next night, after the couple sighting and after it made the paper, there's a woman that was getting in her car. She was getting ready to go to work. And as she opened up her car door, she got ready to get in her car. All of a sudden, in the high weeds next to her, just started standing this thing. She describes as being 7 to 8 foot tall. Just this giant, mammoth, slender, whatever the hell it was. Scared the hell out of her. She spun around, ran as fast as she could into her house, opened the door, slammed the door, locked it, ran to her back door, made sure to lock that, and she's just sitting there in the house. She doesn't know what to do. Just kind of locked in. Again, it's one of those things where I think when you see stuff like this, not like you're going to call the police because you don't even really know what you saw.
Yeah.
She's kind of talking herself out of, like, this wasn't a big deal. It wasn't anything, yada, yada. So she decides, I'm going to go towards the front door. I'm going to look out and see if I see anything. So she's walking up, and she's getting to the front window, and just as she gets ready to push away the front curtain, she realizes that there's a little slit in it, and all she can see is these red eyes looking at her through this little slit.
So it's like right at her house.
It's right on her front porch, because she said as she backed away, she could hear it on her front porch walking around. So now it's like, what the hell do you do? now the thing that gets me with this is, my thought is, I'm going to get my gun, and I'm going to call the cops. There's two things I'm doing for sure. I don't, she didn't do any of them. She didn't call the cops for as far as I can tell, but she just hunkered down till morning time, went out, it was gone in the morning. Again, this is another woman. She was driving home from work. As she's driving down the road, she kind of sees this thing flying at her car, which is odd. You know, it's like she doesn't know, is it an owl, is it a bird? Like, what is this thing? But as it gets closer and closer and closer, it almost gets right to her windshield before it pops up over her car. Right when it gets to her windshield, it's pretty much as close as me and you are right now. It looks her square in the eye. And again, she describes these eyes as just being this crazy red color, almost wants to put you in a trance. Like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's got to be something to see, like, a color red that you can't even describe.
Yeah.
You know? Just so it's just totally out of this world. There's nothing in this world to compare to it, which is just crazy. And it's how a lot of these people describe the eyes.
I had something like that happen before with a turkey.
With a turkey?
I was driving in my first car, Jetta, driving home to my parents' house when I lived at the time, and this turkey, man, it flew out of the one field, and its talons grazed my windshield and then just flew right across. And I mean, I missed it.
Yeah.
But, like, if I would have hit that thing, man, it would have shattered my windshield.
Yeah, like a 20-pound bowling ball going through the air, pretty much.
I remember just just kind of just staring at it, like, in awe, like, what the hell is that? So, I mean, I couldn't even imagine, like, this thing.
All right, so let's just one-up this thing. So when you make that eye contact, all of a sudden she woke up the next day, and she just has this horrible pink eye that has her eyes swollen shut. She can't even see out her
Did
eyes.
it fart when it flew across?
Well, it could have. The thing is, a lot of people are trying to investigate like the origins of the Mothman, but nobody really looks at where the Mothman poos.
Yeah.
That's never been talked about. Through all my research,
You don't know where it poops.
You
I'm
don't know where
assuming
it
it
poops.
poops back at home base, like you said, because like when I'm all day long,
for sure,
I will hold a poop in at work all day just to come home and poop at my home base. It just hits different
it does hit different. But it's nice to have that poo at work too,
because it wastes a little bit of time.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now
you
I know.
always.
Sometimes I'll leave half there, then I'll keep half in the tank
Well,
for when I come home to unload.
There's no halvesies for me. It's holesies only. We have problems if there's halvesies.
Yeah. Well, I remember in Legion when you came over and left a log in our room, and you clogged it. So yeah, I could see that.
It happens. And what was the moral of that story? They know where I pooped. Nobody knows where the Mothman poops. So this woman has conjunctivitis of her eyes. She can't open them. It's like a couple days till she can open her eyes. So I don't know. It's weird. Like she saw something that was that
Pink, that she got pink eye.
Yes. Damn. It was so red it can be described as pink. So as all these sightings and everything just continued to just pour into the sheriff's office and the local newspapers, like the sheriff's office in this town was not equipped to deal with
Probably
this.
had like 2 guys working.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's like you have this kind of mass hysteria. It's not equipped. So their logic was like, all right, we got to go out and we got to get answers. Their most logical thing to do was they contacted the University of West Virginia to send some professors and scientists, and I don't know who else they sent down there, to just be like, hey, we need an answer for what the hell's flying around our town, making our women have pink eye.
So like at least they actually took this thing seriously. They went just
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You know what I mean? They actually like did everything they could to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, it seems that way. Like even in that very first sighting, the fact that they went all the way up to the power plant to check everything
Yeah.
out, like they did their due diligence. But so what they kind of came up with, they had these scientists and stuff like that in the area. They came up with a sandhill crane, is what these people were seeing. So the sandhill crane stands about like 4 to 5 foot tall, and has like the normal long neck like a crane does, but one of its features is it has this red around its eyes and like its feathering and everything. So that was one of the reasons. Also, and this is kind of like a cooler explanation, and I think this kind of fits more the bill for what the Mothman is. They blamed it on just an abnormally large owl. But the thing with the red eyes is, because of owls being nocturnal animals, their eyes work different than ours. So when you shine a light on our eyes just, I don't know what they do. I guess they kind of like show a little bit of reflection or whatever. When you show it on a nocturnal animal, it shows it as like an orange red.
Yeah.
Because their eyes are just slightly different. They're able to take in the light where ours bounces them off. So that was what the sheriff's department came up with after all this research. And
Do you think like they were legit scared and worried about this, and they're like, well, we got to find something to calm the public down?
yeah, I mean, pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Because you got to think, for every one of these like calls of people seeing the Mothman is some Joe Schmo that's
Yeah.
all drunked up and saw, I don't know, a feather fly, and he saw the Mothman. It's not like everybody that's calling it isn't logically seeing the Mothman. If the Mothman even really was a thing, at this point it's not like there's any pictures of it. There's no real like mass sightings of this creature, So is it real? Is it not? I don't know. So around the same time as the Mothman was sweeping over Point Pleasant, residents began to notice this strange occurrence. So what they would do is they would leave their house, they would go outside around 8:30, they would look up in the sky, and what would they see? All these lights up in the sky every night at 8:30.
So they would just start going outside at 8:30 and looking up in the sky.
Like, it got to the point where I watched a video on this woman that, like, she was a kid back then, but she was just like, yeah, you just went out and you saw the lights. Like, it was just like, it was what it was. There was no questions asked about it. Like, they would see these lights. They said some of them were in, like, the shape of triangles, but they would kind of, like, hover around. They would take off, like, and it kind of got to the point where these were all UFO sightings, is what it really boiled down
So,
to.
are we getting into that the Mothman is a type of alien?
So yes, there is a theory. I'll get into that later, but yes, they think that there is. That's one of the theories, is that he is an alien being. So as this continued to go on, you started getting some the UFO stories would come in, much like the Mothman stories. So there's a guy named Bo Schertzer, and this guy drove. Is that a funny name to you?
I don't know.
Bo, we apologize for Corey's just total neglect. Schertzer.
Okay.
I mean, at least that's how I'm saying it. It's old Schertzer. So they were driving Blood Cross. Blood Cross? So they were driving a Red Cross. Why did I put it right here?
What are they driving?
A Blood Cross.
What's the blood cross?
I don't know. I can't figure it out. That's what I typed. It's got to be true.
Blood cross.
So they were driving a Red Cross blood van down the road.
So a red van?
A red van. It could have been red, could have been white.
All right.
A little bit of white, a little bit of blue, maybe.
Okay.
So they were driving this, going from hospital to hospital, delivering blood. So he was.
Oh, a blood. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you think when I said like blood that was describing the color of the vehicle?
I did. I was
All
thinking
right,
right
on.
I pictured a red van, but you mean a van that has blood in it?
Yes,
okay.
Literally blood. Yes.
Gotcha. All right, we're good now.
So he was driving it. A nurse was riding shotgun. It was late at night, so they kind of got to the point where he's like, you know what? I don't really need you to navigate. I know where I'm going. Why don't you just take a nap? So he drove. The nurse is napping in the front seat. And as he's driving along, they're following up the Ohio River. So the Ohio River's on their left. He's driving up along. And all of a sudden, he kind of sees this, like, something catches his attention out of the corner of his eye. It's not the Mothman, but it's these lights that are just kind of running parallel with his car as he drives up this. And you got to figure over the river, there's not really any trees or anything, so it's kind of flat through there. Mm-hmm. So he's driving up along, and he looks to the left, and here's these lights, and all of a sudden he kind of realizes that these lights are coming from what looks like a UFO, a circular object just flying in the sky, flying along. As any normal human being would do, he went into total panic mode. He just sped up to try and get away from this thing, which he's not going to. It's just following parallel with him. And as he gets up to, he's looking for turnoffs on each side of the road. Well, I guess not on the left because the river's there. He's looking for turnoffs on the right side of the road to just get off this road and get away from this thing. And as he looks over to his left, he sees these two giant arms come out of the UFO. Like they're fixing to just pick his car right up and eat it like a hot dog. You know what I mean? So he's just, I don't know, you're in full, what do you do at that point in time? Well, right at that point, a car came around the bend in front of him, and it seemed like when their lights hit this UFO object, the UFO kind of spun out and took off like it didn't want to be seen. And that's the only thing that saved him. I don't know what the plan was to just with this car. I don't know if they're bloodsuckers or what's going on. So you remember I told you about old Mr. Partridge earlier?
Partridge in a pear tree, yep.
That's right. Mr. Partridge, the man that lost his poor dog, the man that
stood out on his porch.
Yeah, Mr. Partridge that stood out on his porch. The poor man that lost, or maybe lost his TV, depending on what reports you get with.
Lost his TV, lost his dog.
Lost his porch.
Lost his porch.
So, at the same time, he claims, and this is where I'm kind of looking at Mr. Partridge as, were you being serious the first time? Or were you just embellishing this article that you read about the Mothman? But at the same time, he claims that he could see lights outside his house one night. They're flying really low overhead. So he runs outside, he looks up, and he can just see this giant circular spaceship flying right above his yard. I don't know what the fascination with Mr. Partridge's house is or with him is. I don't really know. It was close enough, though, that he could see that, like, the rivets holding this thing together were, like, black bolts and rivets all the way around it. So he ran inside, locked the doors, but this became, like, a regular occurrence
For Mr. Partridge, or
yeah, for Mr. Partridge. It got to the point where it just wasn't even that concerning when he would see it out there anymore. But he noticed every time that these would show up, he would get these strange phone calls. And the way he described the phone calls, it almost sounds like you ever have a fax machine call, or it just kind of gives you the beeping and stuff. It's almost what it sounded like. It was just this like beeping and mechanical noise on the end of it. But it always came right after he saw these just totally random UFOs, or what he called UFOs. Again, could he be embellishing? I don't know. Either way. And that takes us to the Lilly family, who had a very similar thing happen at their house. Now, they were located right out off of the TNT area uptown near the wildlife management area. So the family was sitting in their house getting ready for bed when all of a sudden the lights outside in front of the house just got bright like it was daylight. All the windows shined like it was just totally daylight. They couldn't even tell what was going on. And just like that, the lights were gone. They came and went. And this happened over and over to them, like these lights. But what's interesting
like
is...
in one night, or like...
No, this happened like over many nights.
Oh,
like
okay.
Basically all through the spring, all through the summer, into the fall. They would just have these random lights that would just light up their entire house. But what would always follow these lights was they'd be laying in bed that night. They would hear kitchen cabinets slamming, doors slamming in the house. Like it sounded like the downstairs was just totally active. And they would run downstairs to see if anybody was down there, and there'd be nothing there. It was almost like poltergeist activity would happen in the house after they would see all these lights. So there's hundreds and hundreds of UFO sightings all through this area.
Hundreds.
So there's hundreds of UFO sightings all through Point Pleasant and the Ohio River going up through there. Like at this time in the 60s, this was like UFO Central. There was all these sightings in Michigan, all these sightings in Ohio, all these sightings in West Virginia, which is that'll be a whole nother episode we can do on that and everything.
Just the UFO sightings.
Just the UFO sightings.
Wow.
But when I speak of another episode about UFOs, that also speaks of an episode we have in the near future.
Cracking cans.
That also talks about an episode I have in the near future with the Men in Black.
Are they coming into this shit right now?
Are they coming in? They've been in this shit. Yeah, so as soon as all these UFO sightings and everything started happening in Point Pleasant, it wasn't long until the Men in Black came rolling into this town. So you're talking about, like, how crazy does this story go? It starts as just this creature that was spotted one night. It goes to UFOs.
Now we got the Men in Black.
The Men in Black. So if you don't know what the Men in Black is, it's pretty much exactly like the movie portrays the Men in Black being. They're these guys, they roll up in all black suits, white undershirt. There's some interesting facts about these guys. So the fact that I kind of like about these guys is they're said to roll in these like really, really nice Cadillacs, but not like new Cadillacs. So it'd be like, we're in 1966. It's like they all roll in with 1954 Caddies, but they look spotless, brand new, like they just came off the assembly line. And every single one of them drives them. So as they're in Point Pleasant, people start getting visits from them. And there's really two main people that it seems like get the visits from them. One is the reporter from the Point Pleasant, I don't know what the newspaper's called. Damn. One is the main reporter that has been reporting for the Athens Messenger, that has been talking about the Mothman and all the UFO sightings. So Mary Heyer was the local reporter for the Athens Messenger. So the Athens Messenger was just this like really small-time local paper where Mary worked at. She's kind of been the voice of the town for all these Mothman sightings. She knows a lot of people in the town, so she's able to talk to them, really get like good reports on what's going on. So she sat in her office one summer in '67. The day was just like pretty much any other day. She went through calls and notes that came in, some sightings, some UFO stuff, just pretty much your normal stuff. And as she sat in her office, she looked out and she caught a glimpse of a man. This man looked funny. So this man was like 5'5" tall. So just a little short fella. He wore a black suit, white shirt, black shoes and tie. Was he wandering in her office and he just asked her for directions, which is just, it's odd because why would you just come into this random like newspaper place and ask for directions? So, and at this point, she's he's already walked past like a bunch of coworkers and just kind of made like a beeline right into her office to ask her specifically for directions on how to get to like a town in Ohio, like a bigger town in Ohio that he should know how to get. It just kind of seemed odd that he didn't know how to get to it, you know? So she looked at this man in the face. It just seemed odd. This dude was like super white. It was almost like he was like white to a fault. Like it was like his skin was just perfect. He didn't have any kind, like no moles, no freckles, nothing like that. It's just this like perfectly white skin. Almost looked like a doll face. And she realized after this guy asked for directions, he was just staring at a pen on her desk. Like staring at this pen. She was just looked at him and was just like, yeah, you know, you need to get there. It's, you go here and there. Do you want this pen? She said this guy just let out this high-pitched, like, laugh. Like, woo! He was so excited that she gave him just a normal ballpoint pen. So that night as she got ready for bed, like, this was just a super random sighting of this guy. This guy comes in her office, asks for a pen, just giggles. He left. He didn't even get all the directions after he left.
He take the pen with him?
He took the pen with him, just like, woo! It's like, okay, whatever, you know? But as she's laying in bed that night, she has what she describes as a UFO just hovering over her lawn.
This was later that night.
Later that night. So after she went home, 9, 10 o'clock at night, dark out. So she said that it lit up all the windows in her house and then just poof. Vanished like as soon as it came. So the next day she had a similar sighting. These guys came in, they looked a lot like the guy that came in the day before, the way they were dressed, but these guys were different because they were tall and slender, like 6 foot tall, but
like some Will Smiths.
Yeah, well, kind of like Will Smiths, but they were super white, just like the guy before. Yeah, so like Tommy Lee Jones more, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they had like no facial expression. They just seemed like really straight to the point. And all they asked her is, if somebody told you to stop reporting on the UFOs and the Mothman, what would you say to them? This Mary just went, it's a pretty good response. She just looked at him square in the eye and just said, I'd tell him to go to hell. It's like, okay. So obviously they weren't super thrilled for this because they were almost coming in like trying to intimidate her. Like, what would you do if somebody told you not to do this anymore? So as soon as the men heard this, they just like stood up and all their motions were like super robotic. So they just stood up, turned, and out the door they went.
I just picture them like standing up at the same time.
Exactly.
Arms the same way.
Dude, that's how. Yes, I think that's how it was. They were just like super robotic in everything they did. And it was really interesting because this man came in later on that same day, and he was told him that he was a UFO researcher. Now, you got to understand, this time there's all these UFO sightings in the town. So there are lots of UFO researchers just working their way into this town. And Mary has formed a pretty close relationship with a couple of the guys that have come in just because they're so active with, a lot of them are reporters from other towns. So she just got a pretty close relationship with them. But this guy just, he seemed off, just like the guys that she saw earlier in that day. The biggest thing was this dude had a horrible stutter, like a really, really bad stutter. And he struggled to even get out any kind of sentences. So she was really starting to wonder what was going on. 2 different people came into her work, right? Which isn't that big a deal, but these 2 different people, this guy that came in with the stutter asked her the same question that the 2 men in black asked her earlier in the day. What would you do if they told you to stop reporting on UFOs and the Mothman? She was a little more sympathetic with this guy because it took him so long to spit it out. You know, he just like, that's seriously, this guy just had that bad of a stutter that she had more sympathy with him. But she really just felt uneasy about what was going on. So Mary looked at the man and thought she would ask him about John Keel, who we're going to talk about later. John Keel is kind of a well-respected UFO chaser. He ended up writing a book and everything. So she asked him about John. And this guy just looked at her and said, John Keel is a liar. That's all he really said about her. John Keel is a liar.
How quick did he get it out when he said it, though? I feel like
I don't know.
He'd been there for like at least 20 minutes.
Did no stutters come out when he said that? Is that how serious he was about John?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Huh.
But I assume he did stutter it out, so it's probably like 35 seconds of John Keel as a liar.
Yeah.
So Mary knew knew not to ask anymore about John Keel, because John Keel was one of the guys that she became really close with since he came to Point Pleasant to do kind of the investigation on the Mothman and all the UFO sightings. So this guy that came in second, the guy with the stutter, he went by Mr. Brown. And basically this guy came into her office and wanted to be able to see, he just wanted access to some of the people that have seen UFOs to be able to go talk to them. So she was able to just give him like a really small list of some people in the town that she knew really wasn't going to put up with any crap. She gave them the names to him, and he was kind of on his way. But after that, these men in black came in regularly every week to talk to Mary. And a lot of times they would always ask her that same question. What if somebody told you to stop reporting on the UFOs and the Mothman? And you know Mary, because I seen her first response. I don't even need to know what her second response is. I tell them to go to hell. I know she's hitting him with that over again.
I mean, at this point, I think she'd be cranking up them words to like an F word.
Well, she might.
Like, at this point.
This is the 60s, Corey. They have F words back then?
I don't know.
Me either. And the other person that was of big interest for these men in black in Point Pleasant was none other than John Keel himself. You know, John Keel is a liar. Both more stuttering involved. So he wasn't a resident of Point Place. He actually wasn't from the state of West Virginia at all. John Keel grew up in New York State, and when he was 17, he moved to New York City to pursue a career in journalism. Not long after that, he ended up getting drafted into the Army to go fight in Korea. But because of his background in writing, he actually spent most of the war writing propaganda to try and help with morale through all the soldiers. Really, a long story short, John spent a lot of his time in the Middle East just kind of research. He kind of researched everything, like all the way from like snake charmers to the Yeti of the Middle East. Just a lot of weird stuff. But eventually he moved back to New York. He got a job writing pretty steadily, and he had got sent down to Point Pleasant to investigate what the hell was going on with this UFO stuff. He claims to have been chasing UFOs through all kinds of different states, and with the Mothman sightings, that's what brought him here. So he set up shop for a number of months, interviewing a lot of witnesses in town and becoming good friends with Mary. But he stated that he was basically harassed from the time these men in black got into town till he left.
So he was harassed from the men in black.
He was harassed from the men in black. And he's kind of one of the guys that is said to coin the term men in black. Nobody really knew who these guys were because at this time UFO sightings weren't super big or anything like that. So he's the one that just started calling them men in black. And he actually got to the point where he called them out on all having these Cadillacs because he noticed that these Cadillacs were following him around everywhere. So he kind of like, I don't know, they're not being super tricky by just following him around in these same black Cadillacs every day. So I don't know if he just got out and just yelled at him like, leave me the hell alone, you know. But all of a sudden after that, they all started driving around Volkswagens. It was just like super random. But it was the same thing. Like these Volkswagens were all older models that looked brand new though, like they were just off the assembly line but from 20 years ago. It was just It was so weird. So now you have in this town, you have the Mothman, you have the UFOs, and you have the men in black all in this small town. And this town just kept trying to move forward and move forward because really at the end of the day, none of these things seemed to be hurting people. The only thing that anything was really getting hurt was the UFOs were said to be abducting animals and livestock. They said that some of these livestock were found miles away from where they were taken.
So the UFOs would take the livestock and then they would drop them off somewhere else?
After they did, like,
After
killed them,
probed them,
and they said it was like surgical precision on all the cuts. Some of the animals were found with no blood left in their bodies. So take that for what it is. I think probing would be the least of their worries at that point.
Yeah.
So you fast forward just over a year from the original Mothman sighting on December 15th, 1967. The town woke up just like normal. We're talking it's a week and a half before Christmas, so the kids are going to school, excited for the weekend and for the winter break. Adults are going to work. You know, they're going to be getting ready to go out Christmas shopping. And it was just like a normal day. The town was decorated in their lights. A lot of people were leaving Point Pleasant, going to Ohio. Some people were coming from Ohio into Point Pleasant. And on that day, the Silver Bridge that connected the two collapsed. When that bridge collapsed, it killed 46 people.
How big was this bridge?
This bridge, I assume it, I don't think it's super huge, but I don't know how big the Ohio River is. You know, but yeah, when it collapsed, it killed. They said it was rush hour, so this bridge was basically bumper to bumper
during like the holiday season.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was just bumper to bumper traffic.
So how far are we from like the first sighting? Like how many days has it been?
This has been just over a year. So
Okay.
the first sighting was the middle of November, 1966. The bridge collapsed December 15th, 1967. So we're
Okay.
like a year and a month.
A year and a month.
Yes.
And it seems like there hasn't been any Mothman sightings. It turned into like UFOs.
Yeah, it seemed like everybody's so focused on the UFOs and just being stalked by everything else that
Mothman kind of just.
that is until the bridge collapse. And then there's some speculation going on. So basically what they blame the bridge collapsing on.
Mothman's fat ass.
He ain't that big. He's only like a 7-footer.
I
No,
mean-
so it was an I-bar bridge, and they just basically blamed. So the I-bar bridge kind of has like the chains running up top, and they said those are the I-bars on it. Those I-bars, one of those just blew, causing the bridge to collapse. They said it was one 1/1000th of an inch was all that fault was to be able to cause that bridge to collapse.
Wow.
So with that bridge collapse, this kind of took all. Nobody cared about the Mothman, the UFOs, the Men in Black anymore after this because people knew there's 46 people that died. It's a small town. There are people within the town that died. So I think there were so many people mourning what was going on that all of a sudden all these other things just got thrown out the window and that all the focus got put back onto the people of Point Pleasant. And once the stuff started settling down, this is when the stories of what really happened to the Silver Bridge. One woman came out and said that she saw two men in suits that had been working on this bridge for the 3 or 4 days prior.
Working on the bridge.
They were said to be climbing the bridge working on it. I take that for what it is. They said there were UFO sightings. They also said there was a sighting of Mothman. It sounds like in daylight on top of that bridge the day before. I assume just gnawing at that eye-bar. I don't know.
Just chewing away.
I guess. I don't know.
All right.
And this is the best one. All right. Are you ready? So this is
I think so.
This is the Lilly family. So the Lilly family is the one that would have the UFOs visit their house, and then they would have poltergeist activity after that.
Yep.
They claim they lived right next to the wildlife management area. They claim to see 8 to 10 Mothman all rise out of the fields and fly towards Point Pleasant just minutes before the bridge collapsed.
8 to 10 Mothmans.
8 to 10
Mothman.
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 And mothwomen, I'm sure, were there too,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, that was kind of the story they went with.
So 8 to 10 Mothmen/women took out this bridge.
According to, now what I find interesting is there was never like any sightings of more than one Mothman at once. You know, there's never, I don't know what you call a flock of Mothmen.
Like, yeah, goose, geese.
Yeah.
I don't
I don't know. So when you you throw all these in, I don't know. And really at the end of the day, you kind of go through this whole entire thing and you're never going to really know what the Mothman was. Some people say that they think the Mothman was an extraterrestrial creature and that the UFOs were there basically trying to hunt him. Some people think that the Mothman was essentially the angel of death. He showed up there to kind of warn the town of what was going to happen with the Silver Bridge. Other people thought that essentially, you know, there's a lot of people out there that think UFOs are not extraterrestrials, but they're angels and demons sent from heaven. So they didn't know if in this small town in West Virginia there was a war going on between the angels and demons of the town. Nobody's really ever going to truly know what was going on.
So were there any sightings after the bridge collapsed?
There was no sightings. That pretty much ended all. Now there's another theory that states that it was all a hoax. that these first couples just kind of made up this story, or some guy dressed up like this scared these couples, and just because of the mass hysteria, people were seeing what they thought was the Mothman in everything in the town. But that doesn't quite explain all the UFOs and the Men in Black. There's a major motion picture was made about, it's called The Mothman Prophecies, and it was actually based off the book written by John Keel, who we talked about the Men in Black kind of harassing. It came out in the early 2000s. His book came out with the same name, The Mothman Prophecies, that came out in the late 70s. That's kind of how Mothman, I guess, is known in terms today, and that's kind of how in the early 2000s he became a little more popular. That's how I heard about him, was after these movies were released. I've never actually seen the movies, but I just remember seeing videos and podcasts of the Mothman, and he's just kind of always been my favorite, I guess, of whatever you want to say he is. I guess some people call him like a cryptoid or whatever.
So, like, Mothman made Point Pleasant a tourist attraction, essentially, right? Like, before Mothman, they were really nothing. They're nothing on the map, and now they're like this tourist attraction. From what I'm aware, they have statues of Mothman there. They have all kinds of different like museums and all kinds of different things dedicated to the Mothman.
They have the Mothman Festival. I think it's every September down there. It's a weekend-long festival that is just devoted. You can go there, and they have a Mothman-themed coffee shop. You can go to the one local pizzeria and get a Mothman pizza where it's like these pepperoni eyes on it and stuff like that. So really, I mean, it's what this town's known for. And I guess it's just a way for a town to grieve. Real life tragedy happened to it. Or maybe it's just a town still trying to figure out what the Mothman was and what he wanted.
Or if, it was a hoax or something made up just for a town to get some more money.
Yeah, it could be.
They're still benefiting from whatever happened in the 60s. I don't know.
Yep. And the reason, I guess I should be explained a little bit. The person that thought they saw the Men in Black climbing up the bridge, they kind of thought he was like they were setting traps for this Mothman or whatever it was to try and capture it.
That's interesting, because like I'm when you said that, in my mind I'm thinking about like a bear trap.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell does a Mothman trap look like?
Yeah, I guess it looks like a bridge that just collapses when he gets under it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I guess. Yeah. It's crazy. But yeah, since pretty much after that took off all sightings of the Mothman. There's actually been some newer sightings, which I didn't get too much into. They were actually in like the Chicago area where people thought they saw a Mothman. And a lot of people were fearful because they thought, because they saw the Mothman, what is he there for? Because it certainly seems like the Mothman sightings, he came to Point Pleasant to warn them about catastrophe.
Well, I got a question for you. How many Mothwoman does it take to get to the moon?
Well, I've kind of figured you were going to ask me this, so I have rattled off some numbers here. See, Corey, the moon is approximately 238,856 miles away from us. And you just do some simple math where you take a 7-foot Mothman. There's approximately 754.28 Mothmen in a mile. And when you kind of do a little bit of ring-ding-dinkling, you get to 180,164,303 Mothmen to reach the moon. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
What about the sun?
Yeah, so nobody needs to go to the sun because they'll just burn up. So
okay, all right.
Yeah. You got to at least ask me realistic questions. Go to the moon. So I guess that brings us to the time in the show where we do our Cracking Cans folk score.
Which, again, to recap from week 1, it is a 5-category breakdown. Each category has 10 points. First one, spookiness. Second one is historical cultural significance. Third is believability. Fourth is uniqueness. And fifth is the threat level. So how it works is Mike and I will both fill out a folklore score sheet, and we will add our scores together which will get our folklore score, combined score, which will give us what tier we are. And again, for the tiers, we have 10 different tiers, all the way from 100 points down to 0 points. So our top tier is legendary status, classic creeper, spine tingler, intriguing tale, curious oddity, mild myth, barely believable, forgettable fiction, mythical misfire, and urban legend abyss. So if you guys can remember last week, we did the Kraken, which scored a 72, which was a
Spine
folklore
tingler.
score tier of spine tingler.
Spine tingler.
Which is our third highest tier. So let's see what we got tonight for the Mothman.
Yeah, I'll be anxious to see. My score was quite a bit lower than yours last week because you had a 42. I think I had a 30.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So let's see.
anxious to see. So the reveal is 38 and a 33.
Damn, I'm always higher than you.
You are.
I'm gonna have to.
You get the tingles.
I do. I get it in my legs.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that equals.
It'd be 71.
71.
71. So that's pretty much right there at that spine tingler again. It's right there at the Kraken. Pretty dang close.
I wonder what our first. I wonder what our first. I guess we can go both. Classic creeper is going to be, and our first legendary status is going to be.
That'd be interesting. I kind of have an idea what I think legendary status is going to be, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it to myself.
Yeah,
And
he just fell over. But
And if, I don't think it's going to be him. I don't think it's
think
going to be the Sam Squanch
You don't
or the
think it's gonna be
Bigfoot.
him?
No,
I think it's going to be him.
only because I think we're going to do an episode before him.
Hmm.
It's going to get it, but that's what I got. So that hits the spine tingler on our list, and that pretty much brings us to the end of our episode, doesn't it, Corey?
Yeah.
It brings us on to our teaser for next episode. Corey, what do we have next week to look forward to?
So get ready for chills and thrills on next week's episode. We dive deep into the shadows to explore the eerie and enigmatic figure known as the Hat Man. Is he a mere figment of our imaginations or a real entity lurking in the darkness? Join us as we unravel spine-tingling encounters, share hair-raising stories, and delve into the unsettling mystery behind the Hat Man. Tune in, if you dare, for a journey into the unknown that will leave you questioning what's real and what lurks just beyond the edge of night. The Hat Man.
I'll tell you what was real tonight. It was these UFO Maine blueberries. They were pretty solid.
I mean,
It was delicious.
I finished that, I think, before you even got started.
Yeah, I was like halfway through the couple story. No, I did not. I don't even know if I got to the couple
I
story.
don't know if you started talking yet.
I think I said the guy's name was Steve, and Corey's like, "Hey, I need another." And that's where we were at. But yeah, they were really good. So that was good, bro. I think we already have our brews picked out for next week. We have two good ideas we kind of have to decide on. But
Yep.
So tune in next week. Check us out. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on the YouTube. Cracking Cans Cast, all one word. That's Kraken with a K. And we hope you guys check us out in the weeks to follow. I'm Mike, and I'm out.
And I'm Corey, and I'm going to finish this beer, and then I'm out.